All right, this is the morning show. I'm Jeff Cook with Kristen Messgy, Jackie Contessa, TJ Wilson. The black coffee and heavy cream folks have assembled again.
Good morning. Kristen's
Good morning.
very funny.
Good morning.
Listeners should be aware that Jeff has already insulted Kristen accidentally.
Well done.
So we're off.
Sorry you missed it, everyone.
But listeners must also note he complimented me. Yay!
We're talking about a core issue today, and we'll see how this plays out. Because every time we talk about shame, it goes surprisingly well. Moving through something that Brené Brown says that struck both Kristen and I when we were discussing it, and it has to do with our identity, and especially unwanted identity. Brown points out that unwanted identity, get that idea in your mind, is the strongest elicitor of shame in our life. She proves this with a simple prompt. She says, like, just to expose our triggers, it is really, imagine for yourself saying, it's really important for me not to be perceived as blank. If you can fill in that blank for yourself, I don't want to be perceived as. It's going to say quite a bit about you. This might actually be a great typing question. But there's things that we avoid, especially in the perception of others, and lots of stuff worth saying here. So setting the stage, you guys have seen my emails kind of highlighting this. What's worth saying about this prompt?
I think because it's going to be somewhat flavored per individual, of course. However, I do think there are some that are going to be type specific, which is what we'll be focusing on, that I think will be really interesting. And it's also important to say they're going to be around our core fear. So the invitation is going to be, how can I get real about these things in my life? Because things that cause us shame, identities we don't want to contend with, is where a lot of our work is, in that exact spot.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there's going to be a lot of types that are initially sort of disconnected from this question.
Shame?
Yeah. Well, and like when I hear that question, my initial reaction is like, I don't really care what other people think about me. I just don't ever want to hear about it. But then I have to think a little bit harder to remember, like when someone accuses me of something that I don't believe to be true about me, and I have a negative reaction, like that is the same question.
That's really
So we might have to come at it from a slightly different angle, but I think everyone processes this question in a way, but it doesn't seem obvious at first to all the types.
Totally.
I would say, to Kristen's point, this is something that's just really, it's adjacent to our core motives, not to how we want other people to have an opinion of us, right? So it's interesting because some of it might be one and the same. I mean, we've talked about how like heart center shame and human shame are just a little bit different, but it's about how we walk through the world, and that's, I don't want to be perceived as this as I walk through the world. So I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation.
It could also be, to your point, I don't want to be perceived as this. I don't want to think this about myself. It could be not even related to, someone else thinks that about me. It's what's happening in my life. And am I touching into this thought about myself? And that's going to be triggering as well.
And sometimes it'll be both, right? I don't want to feel this way. I don't want others to think this way. If others think this way, it's something for me to think about. It might be true. If I think this way, it's true, etc. Right? So yeah.
That answered the question I was going to push into. Like, I think what TJ was exposing is that there are some types that care less about what other people think than others. That probably goes alongside this. But I do like this idea that there's also an inner perception of, I don't want to think this about myself, that may be going on as well, and maybe invisible. So the inner outer dynamic here, worth naming. my first thoughts on this was that because it's about shame, at some level, it may likewise be about bonding, and it may be about how we pitch ourselves to others. That is, that we do want to connect with other human beings. Sometimes the way that we connect is the opposite of this trigger. Like I'm offering, as a one, I'm offering something like responsibility. I'm offering that, I'm reliable and a good person, and this is what I'm giving forth to the person in front of me, hoping for connection. And if they think that I am a flawed, irresponsible person, it's actually cutting my superpower. And so shame, the reason I associate it with shame, or at least my first thought on this, was that this may be much more about like how we're marketing ourselves, how we're offering ourselves to others. And so we don't want them to think certain things about us, especially those things that our type rejects most.
It's interesting when we think bonding and connection. I think one thing to add to people, because I think a lot of that could be true, right, is bonding could also be the world at large, the ethereal. People could sub for like in this lifetime, right? I think of type 4 who, yes, they're very connecting people, but when it comes to their identity, they're much more, I think, large scale concerned about like leaving a mark on this world, so to say, just to put it reductively, right? And so I think bonding also lives there. And so I don't want to be perceived as also lives there too. And so it's not necessarily just people, but to your point, I think under bonding too is how we relate, period, not just to people, like how we connect how we connect to what we're connected to.
I find it cleaner to keep this about identity than personally bringing in bonding. I'm finding it mucking up the frame for me. Because when I think of shame, I'm thinking of identity. So I guess I'm just letting the group know. That's where I'm going to keep the frame. Not that I don't think there are pieces there, but it's so type specific when we get into. And this is really, I think, anyway, I'm just trying to keep it clean for myself.
To Kristen's point, if we did stay or add bonding to this conversation, I do think that bonding as under shame and I don't want to be perceived as really works for the heart types in this conversation, but then we'll lose the plot if we try to apply that to all the other types. But like when it comes to identity, maybe bonding and I don't want to be perceived as can be like interlocked or whatever, but I don't think it's necessarily that way for outside the heart center. So I agree.
And perhaps to bridge the gap a little bit, Jeff, while you were talking about bonding, like what I was thinking about was the difference between other people's perceptions of me and what I think other people are perceiving of me. And that is entirely about like if we're going to get into what people are offering, we could get farther down into the a little bit of muck of what you're talking about, Kristen. But I think if we're focused on this is what I think people think about me, we do have that space of here is what I am offering the world in order to curate this image because this is what I want people to think of me. And that's kind of what I was hearing when with Jeff talking about the bonding idea. It's like, I want to connect with other people. I want them to think about me in this certain way because this is what I have to offer.
Which is
just I think there are going to be
different type-wise. Let's just get into the... I think we'll be able to tease it out when we just go through our...
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Jeff, what do you think about
my only addition is I think that Kristen, being the fantastic coach that she is, more interested in doing the work of what can you control. You can't control other people's perceptions, but you can control your inner life. And so let's focus there. That's what I heard in terms of the energy, and that may be the best thing to do on these fronts. So
I heard a compliment.
It's not correct.
I
It's
did
not
too,
incorrect
Jackie.
compliment.
You did. I miss your
No.
why you were pitching that?
So
because it's so different
Identity.
per type. I just don't think that identity is necessarily. I just think it's different. So
not
let's just go
to
through that.
put words in your mouth, but I think talking about maybe bonding in terms of this conversation is a B-side, not like it's a different one
Yes.
altogether. I think we can talk about maybe
Yes.
the question itself first, and perhaps the B-side of the conversation is the bonding piece if it applies.
Which I think will come up as we go through.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Bang. I think we should start with nines.
Let's start with nines.
Let's start with nines.
I think we should start with nines for a handful of reasons. One, I think that inner side is going to be severe. I think that TJ is exactly right in terms of like how much do you value other people's perceptions. But I do think that something's going to come out here in terms of what does elicit the anger of nines based on other people's opinions that's worth talking about. But should I start, or do you want to just say what you avoid identity-wise?
I mean, it's such a hard question for me to ask because I'm adapting to any given scenario. So
Which comes to one on my list.
yeah.
A 9 doesn't want to be perceived as disruptive,
Yes.
demanding.
And you could potentially go as far as saying that a 9 doesn't want to be perceived.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah.
But since we're not going to go all the way there.
I'm really curious because it seems there's a balance, like all things nine-ish. You got your fingers in a bunch of different cracks in the dam that's going to burst open.
Yep.
There's not being perceived. There's also not losing connection.
Yep.
If you're not perceived, people will leave. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't know that until it happens.
We discussed, and it was one of the most fruitful parts, I think, of our discussion on Lincoln, was that it was an example of this. The 9 is perceived as not emotionally caring for his child.
Yeah.
Which hits.
Yeah.
That's about connection. That's about fear of loss. And there's
What's
I
the
would get the
context
sense
for this? I feel lost.
The movie Lincoln.
Oh,
in the movie Lincoln, he's accused of not caring for his children.
okay. And we think he's
And
a
of
9
being
in this
somehow-
movie?
Mm-hmm.
Carry on.
I get the sense that 9s do not want others to think that they are disinterested or lacking a desire for being connected to them, and that would actually be something that would kind of spike the energy.
Yeah. But with a specific asterisk that like I don't want to be perceived that way when I'm not that way. Mm-hmm. If people who I don't care about think that I don't care about them, that's totally fine.
When I was thinking about this question, it's important for me that I'm not perceived as. The question that I sort of like thought to myself is, okay, what does the type do that's automatic, and what's the perception that's out there in the world, because they're not coming from them, and that tends to be like surprising to each type. So what I have for type 9 is, causing a problem, or a disruption or a holdup. Ruthless, right? So no pity, no compassion, no mercy. I don't want to be, it's important that I'm not perceived as at odds or angry with the general flow, right? So I think about, like, for example, like 9's stubbornness, and of course they don't want to be perceived as stubborn. That's just a natural byproduct of what happens automatically, right? So I was trying to think of that standpoint of, we all do these things so automatically, and we're all like, when I put that Instagram poll out there, those were the responses that I heard, were this, not necessarily feedback, but like the impression that they give off about how they walk through the world, how they care about the world.
The two big words that I wrote down with 9s was controlling and inconsiderate. I think, like, thinking about in particular that scene in Lincoln, like so his kid accuses him of not caring about him. Robert says, "You don't care about me. You're only afraid of mom." And that's one of the moments where we see Lincoln's anger come out, and he slaps him. And it is very easy to perceive in that moment that Lincoln is mad at his his son for talking back to him or something. Like any number of things could be in that space. But to me, what that moment read as was specifically that Robert accuses his father of not caring about him, and from the incredible well of emotion that Lincoln has for his son, he is furious that someone would accuse him of that, of not caring. And that anger causes him to hit him. And because the image that we so often put out in the world is sort of supposed to be a little translucent, it is really, really difficult for me when people accuse me of something that I am not representing. When people accuse me of something that they have potentially put onto me.
Is it possible that they've seen something that you don't want to see? I mean, I think that's what this conversation is really about. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And like anger comes out as a certain thing, and it's for nines, it's usually actually about something else. Disinterest shows up in a certain way in nines, and it's not necessarily actually disinterest. It's often exhaustion or distraction or something else. It's
That's good.
Bang. Do we hit 9 sufficiently?
Do you want me to share the poll results?
Sure.
yeah.
So I put an Instagram poll out when I had read Atlas of the Heart, billions of whenever it came out, and I had people just say, what's your type? And, fill in the blank for the sentence. It's important that I'm not perceived as. And what I got back from nines was, and some are repeats, so I'll only say them once, but lazy, mean, rude, weak-minded, unkind, overbearing, someone who dislikes others, and bad.
Inconsiderate.
So then, of course, the invitation would be to be with the fact that nines can be those ways, to wrestle with that reality. That's the
Can be
invitation
that way,
here for all
or-
the types. What's that?
Or come across that way.
Actually be.
Right. To say, I am that way, even though it's not my intention.
I
The
can
acceptance
be
of
that
yeah.
way. I am a whole complete person who can be these ways that are the most distasteful to me without falling into shame. Because shame is where identity becomes unworkable. Shame takes us out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can we hold these pieces that are so distasteful, gently in our lives, in our consciousness?
That's good. Well said.
I'm curious here. That feels like a pivot from what I heard you saying up front in terms of doing like the inner work versus
No,
now
that's what I meant to say.
the perception of others matters, and so I need to meet the perception of others.
No,
That's not
can
what
I
it said.
hold these realities about me that my type tells me I can't be that? It's like, but of course you can, because you're a human being.
Right. Can I hold the fact that I might be causing a disruption or a holdup through what I'm doing automatically? Can I hold that I might actually be angry and upset and at odds? Can I hold that, etc.?
Yes.
I don't ever want to be perceived as inconsiderate, but sometimes I am a little inconsiderate,
Right.
accidentally, because I'm too tired that day for whatever reason. It does happen.
That's
And
right.
as much as I don't want to be inconsiderate, it happens.
That's
and it is more important to a part of my work is acknowledging that, yes, sometimes I am inconsiderate, and just try to be better about that. And then the fact that people perceive me that way is something that can sort of like fall away from that space.
That's really well said. Yes.
But the perception of it is still going to be very informative for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you unpack why you would say that would be the healthy move?
Me?
Anybody?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're all whole human beings, and not being able to own certain parts of our identity and our humanity is what causes the problems in relationships with people. When someone can clearly see something and it's like, I'm not that because I can't handle it. Or maybe when we get to 6, I can be more specific, but it's incredibly important that we develop enough capacity to be aware of who we really are and not just who we think we need to be. It's a maturity.
It reminds me of that quote from Upton Sinclair. I'm paraphrasing it. So I guess it's from Jackie Contessa. It's impossible to get someone to understand something when their whole identity is based on not understanding it. So to be able to accept these as neutral because they are true and say, okay, I can accept that I'm a person who goes here. I can also accept that by not continuing to perpetuate these patterns, I can go another way. So to accept it and to say, yep, this is true, this is fact, is the first step in any kind of work. And perhaps a rock that we need to turn over, some of us, or a good step for the work, if we're like, hey, where do I start? What do I do? Is to be able to complete the sentence for ourselves, right? It's important I'm not perceived as, because what's under that rock is something that we might not want to be perceived as because we possibly could be, or there's something adjacent to a motive or what have you. But to be able to accept it as true, neutral, possible, just is, to accept reality is the first step to any work, I think.
And I think about 8s. We talk about this a lot from sort of the other side of it with 8s.
Let's do them next.
And go backwards.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Because 8s, just to finish that seg, the 8s are most disconnected from the impact they have on other people. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when 8s are accused of being a-holes, like their inner perception of themselves is that they were not being that way.
Right.
But they're disconnected from how they're perceived, from the way they impact other people. And so part of the work is not necessarily, like, it's not that they need to be nicer, but it might be that they need to be aware of how other people perceive them, mm-hmm. and adapt. And if you don't want to be seen as a jerk, then stop being a jerk. You may not be mean, you may not mean it, but you may be saying things that make you seem like a jerk.
You don't have to agree with the definition of what a jerk is. You just have to say, okay, this is what people are saying is jerk behavior. I'm not going to do that.
One of the things I have for 8s is controlled, right? They don't want to be controlled. So that's very
perceived as
interesting
controlled?
work.
Sorry.
I think they just want to be controlled, right? They don't want to perceive themselves as being controlled. So what can be hard for them, right, is if someone else is giving them feedback, they have to somehow make it their own idea to change, right? Because if they change because someone else has a thought about them, likely that's going to be, I was just controlled, which is like a no-go.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
8s.
What I have for 8s is, when I thought about it, right, from the what do I do automatically and then how am I perceived, even though it's not where I'm trying to go. Having an agenda or intentions at all, period. Like every time I talk to an 8 about some kind of interpersonal issue, they were just trying to go from A to Z. Like they don't like that it was perceived at all that they had some kind of agenda or intention that had to do with that other person at all.
Which is hilarious.
Collateral damage, they can sort of be like, okay, I get it. You ate my dust as I flew by. But to be perceived and have to fight against having some kind of agenda, like, right? The other thing I had was discarding others or hurting them on purpose. Like when I'm doing a typing session, you would not, it actually shocks me every time how much more quickly they are to accept the word inconsiderate, because they're like, I was not considering it to begin with. I wasn't throwing you in the garbage. And then the last thing I had was that it's important to them that they are not perceived as being touched by their experience, like being changed or harmed or hurt or impacted by their experience, like what's happening to them.
It's a good list.
Jeff, what do you have for 8s?
My view on 8s, I think, is askew right now. And it may be just because my child's an 8 who, special needs. And it forces a perspective on eights that I don't hear in the literature very much. But I think that eights avoid appearing vulnerable and are very aware of the cracks. I think eights come to the world feeling like they are protected with an eggshell, and they don't tell you that because they don't want to expose their vulnerabilities. So the behavior of discarding, hurting, trampling, that's just behavior coming out of that feeling that I need to push hard outward. So in terms of avoidance in the minds of others, yeah, I think it's much more about exposure at some levels. That would be my
But are we
first move.
talking with that would be the sort of unconscious piece.
And it might
Because of
be
the way you're
unconscious.
describing it, it sounds a little more conscious than I think they experience themselves.
That's fair. I mean, that's probably going to be based on maturity. And I mean, any self-awareness
It's
is
all-
going to be
yeah.
variable.
Yep.
Yeah, because I
That
don't
would be
think
my
they
first.
think they are vulnerable. I think that
I recently had an 8 like point blank tell me that fear and respect is the same thing. And like it was very much a conversation about like vulnerability equals a problem.
that
And,
I
like,
don't
that-
have.
There was no irony about it. It was very much like this is correct.
Right.
And yeah, self-awareness was not a part of that conversation.
Right.
Our friends.
I
on
have, Jackie, I have something that's very similar to I think what you were saying is it's like for them to be perceived as like someone took advantage of them is like more shameful than like
to themselves, right? Like
to
know,
themselves
yes,
is
yeah.
more shameful even than like, okay, yeah, I blew by people and didn't notice, right? Or was inconsiderate or whatever. They're like, yeah, totally.
Right.
But if someone kind of got them, that is like
Yeah,
they're not going to do well with
Yeah.
that.
yeah. You got caught in 8, and you're never gonna hear from them again. They're done. Like,
They're
that's-
done.
They're done. Our friends on Instagram, the response to the poll I put out for 8 was distant and rude, ineffective, abrasive. I thought this one was very interesting. It's important to not be perceived as angry at them, like specifically, like if I'm angry, like angry at the person in front of me. Selfish, and then weak and small. Fork found in kitchen.
Did you say fork found in kitchen? Mm-hmm. What does
Like
that mean?
obvious. It's very
Oh,
sky is blue.
A primary for a friend of ours, of TJ and I's, is that he will preface some things by saying, I'm shooting blanks, and then unload anger out into the world. And because he's aware of how he comes across and asks for permission to enter a gear when in safe spaces where he can do that. That strikes me as very a mature posture toward
Very
in these
much.
sorts of spaces.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot about the wisdom from Joey Shuey that reminds us that 8s are not thinking about you as much as you think they are, and like that all of that is sort of wrapped up in a lot of this conversation for me. Like a lot of what you said, Jackie, a lot of what was reported is like all the rest of us perceive this certain energy off of 8s, and we assume it's directed at us a lot of the times. And like that is one of the big things that 8s report as being most harmful to them, is that we assume that energy is directed at us, and they're just plain not thinking about us as much as we think they are.
Right.
and what I
8s
think
are
we're
moving.
collectively elevating is think more about that.
Yes.
Be accountable to your
Yep.
energy.
Yep. Yeah. They're not doing it on purpose. They need to be aware that of the way it comes across.
That's right.
Yeah.
But again, that has
Except
to
for-
be their decision because they won't be controlled by the collective who's asking them
Right.
to.
Yep. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Just like I always say about body types, I always say, you can't make a body type do shit. Like, good luck.
Correct.
Just good luck.
I'll tell you some secrets for the ones, but
Well, yeah.
Please
Be-
do. We're also going
ready
to tell
to
you some
take
secrets
notes.
about ones.
how to get ones to do. Well, I mean, if you know how to move a one, then you don't need my input. TJ, you said that eights are the most disconnected from their impact on others. I would strongly disagree. It's the sevens who don't understand their impact on others, in my experience. I think eights really actually have a sense sometimes when they hit you. I don't think like I've experienced sevens just blowing past.
I think eights are unaware
their
until they're
experience.
completely aware, and sevens
Yeah.
have reframed some shit and justified along the way, so they can't see what you're seeing when they get to the accountability place.
That's it.
But
The
once
accountability,
eights,
they spin.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Sorry.
Well, no, I cut you off. But like once eights see it, they don't like. There's a lot of trying to negate reality, but then once they see it, they don't unsee it. But for sevens, it's like they were spinning along the whole way, and they're not on a. They're like, it's all rose colored. What are you talking about?
The only reason I bring that up is for the purposes of the conversation being that unwanted identity. Is that even going to phase the seven, and how does that play? This was the hardest type for me to put my thumb on.
It does. One of the most helpful things you said to me, Jeff, when I was talking to you about some like a conversation I was having with my husband once, and I was like, I just can't understand like where he's coming from with this. And you like your only response was everybody gets their identity from somewhere. And it just got me to think about it very, very differently because he's not a hard type, but everybody gets their identity from somewhere. And then to that point, that could just be it only matters to me who I am and what my identity is as I go about this world. And you can still answer the question. It's important that I'm not perceived as, for example, negative or the reason that things got heavier took a turn. Anxious because it can't coexist with being free-spirited, right? And wanting to control others. They don't want to, like one of the biggest places you'll see a seven get angry is when you tell them what's happening and when what's happening is that they are controlling other people through their frustration and impatience because shit's not going the way a dog went into frame. What was I supposed to do?
He threw up.
But
Why the
they don't
dog
want to
went
be
through the
perceived.
frame.
But they don't want to be perceived as wanting to control others because that, you know, right? So like it's everyone gets their identity from somewhere, and what you see sometimes is that's, you know, obviously that's part of motive, and you go through life and it just pops, and it's, yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I want to hear what you have for seven now if you had a hard time with it. Jeff.
I felt like sevens, and this really goes towards the inward. I had not thought about the inward perception, but giving off the appearance that they are overwhelmed, that they're defeated by life, that they are limited, that they're trapped. These are like, I think sevens will, especially in their outward posture, will spin. No, I'm above this until they absolutely crash. And even when they absolutely crash, they'll commonly do so like away from everyone, as it were. So
What I know, I'm taking up airtime on this, and I want to hear what everybody has to say. But to your point, what people on Instagram responded wasn't really, I don't want people to see me this way. It's important that essentially I'm not this way. And you hear it all is very adjacent to their motive, right? So what people said as type 7 was a wet blanket, boring, selfish, careless, in the same place that people left me, and flaky. Nobody else, like, I mean, flaky, yeah, sure. But like nobody else cares if you're in the same place that we left you. Right? Like these are all like how they're perceived is essentially the answer to like, I don't want this to be like true with my identity too. So that's interesting.
I just, to add to what you're saying, Jackie, I have like in pain or needy. They don't want to be seen.
Yeah, that's great.
And they don't want to be seen as shallow. They're very offended and bothered by this perception that I think is a lot of Enneagram gobbledygook, that they are shallow.
Yes.
I just think that's wrong. And
not from TJ and I. We come with receipts on sevens are smart. We talk about it all the time. But you're right.
They're
They
smart.
come across. They are thought
I mean,
to
they're
be.
interesting,
Yeah.
and they're frustration types. They are not.
Yes.
They are really dealing with so much internal discomfort that they're trying to get, get away from. But to be perceived in this way that is just this sort of, floaty, shallow thing is understandably, I think, offensive to them.
I actually want to build on this for a second. I hadn't thought about it. Sometimes we weaponize the thing that we don't want to be called or accused of most. So for eights, you see this all over the place. The energy coming at you to make you feel vulnerable is because they don't want to feel vulnerable. Right. Sevens make me feel dumb when we're in a fight. That's actually where they go, and this is why. Does that make sense?
No. It's like what I hear is essentially people projecting their low. They're projecting their low, their most woundable area to their self-esteem, their identity, their ego, their confidence, etc. Right? So they go for what their below the belt is in another person to destabilize.
So so what do you think? Sevens would do what in a fight then?
Try and make you feel dumb.
Try and make you feel dumb. Interesting.
That's that one reach, isn't it? Stress,
The biggest crack I've experienced with my father came here in terms of we're dialoguing, and he went to this space for some reason, and like cutting down my intellect, and it actually really hurt me. And I just knowing that is the place he went when things weren't going his way in the conversation.
Yeah.
And especially his own insecurities around his kids and the blow up of the whole country politically. And we're debating things that in my view matter on those fronts and need to be wrestled with. And I put way too much energy into them. That was the place he went.
He kind of saying you're making things matter that aren't that important.
Only somebody who's stupid would make that kind of argument.
That's a flavor. I mean, you can't say that all sevens would ever say something like that. That's a flavor
of course. I'm giving like an example of how that might materialize, but it is, notice it's the cutting down of somebody's intelligence. It's saying it's what your perception of the world is flawed. That's their center.
It's a good example of how they'll use, for example, insecurity tactics, frustration, impatience, being an idealizing type, etc., to essentially get out of discomfort as quickly as possible. It's not about like I do agree with the sentiment that, like, for example, in our lowest moments, like the things that I notice, like I can actually call out that I did to people are the things that I don't want done to me, right? My husband, the same. I'm like, stop apologize for things that I care about, not you, right? But so there is a projection of that, but also at the same time, like a seven. I heard that. First of all, I'm so sorry that happened to you, and it's not true because you're one of the smartest people I know.
Long time ago. It's just an illustration now.
But I heard that a seven was uncomfortable, and that's it. It's done. What are you going to say after that? TJ, I cut you off. I apologize.
I mean, that's how most people who can't handle any kind of big emotion try to end fights.
Well, but it's a superiority of understanding that comes out in. I don't think that necessarily comes out from all types,
but it comes out from so many. I feel like I mean, go online. Most people are calling each other stupid these days. I guess that's why I'm like, is that a good seven example? That's literally how people are communicating everywhere now, right?
True.
Like, only common sense, everybody. No one has common sense.
Do your own research.
Do your own research. Yeah, exactly.
Go and touch grass, you cow.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we pick on six?
Oh,
last words on sevens. We can pivot.
Yeah. For me, I want to double down on the not doing okay aspect of sevens don't want to be perceived this way, and there's an interesting juxtaposition there with, like, they don't want to be the dancing monkey, but they don't want anyone to ever think they're not capable of being the dancing monkey.
Totally.
Yes.
And anytime you get close,
say that again.
And they will give you a problem, and then you'll try to like work on the problem with them, and then there's no problem.
Yeah.
Or they've got it. And it's like, I didn't start it. You said a thing. And then I tried to go a little deeper, and it's like, there's no problem here.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. It gets really interesting, is especially if you're close with a 7 and they have any kind of depressive experience. Like it becomes this space where like us who love 7s have to work really, really hard to get that 7 to share it with us, to let us help them, because they don't want to be perceived as not being okay.
I have to be real close to someone to work that hard. That is.
Before you say anything, I think one of the things, like to TJ's point, it's hard to share it because to share something, you have to really accept it first. And when there's something you really cannot reframe, how do you accept it? Like, it's the dead end. Like, I can't really reframe this at all. It is. So it's hard to like share that, because I have to accept it. I have to it, all of it. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, but hold on, just to bring in some collective empathy, right? This is where we're getting to the core fears.
Yes.
And so we would all love to be like, gosh, can a 7 just like land in their own pain? No, they cannot. Or they think, I don't know what they think's going to happen, but their subconscious will not allow
It's going to unhook its jaw and swallow them whole, and that's it.
Their
It's
pain
over.
is lava, and it's going
Exactly.
to destroy everything.
So what seems possible or doable to the rest of us is because that's not our core wound.
Yep.
Supposed to elevate. I think you guys are saying this correctly. We are naming the excess here for 7. One of the pivots that's real helpful for 7s is that they can engage their stress number, and something happens there when you move into one space that really counteracts a lot of this. So that I have a debilitating illness. I'm an alcoholic and cannot get control, is something that can come out in one space. But until you move to one space, if you're in excess as a 7, you might be hiding that debilitating illness for a while, in terms of, again, you don't want to be perceived as a drunk.
The other thing I just want to add here is our society really values what 7s can do, and really highlights like mind over matter, just try harder, just be positive. Like 7s are really encouraged in their excess in the world that we live in. So
it perpetuates sort of like, even though they're not image types, they're not value types, things like that, right? Like, it perpetuates sort of this narrative that if you can't uphold making people laugh at Aunt Carol's funeral, like, who are you? And it's like, that discourages half of their depth, and they have to continue to identify with the person who is able to be on at any point. So,
and not only on, but like, there's something very depthy about the way 7s can be. How am I trying to say this? 7s are great in spiritual settings, right? They're like,
Yes.
God's got this. God, like they are really good at doing what kind of we're all supposed to do when it comes to faith, for example. And it's very confusing and hard sometimes to be around a 7 who's extremely good at what they're doing, because they're right. But it's like they are overworking themselves. They're like offering, it's kind of the opposite of, Jeff, what you were saying. It's like they're offering to other people what they need to do a little less of, but what other people can really benefit from. Is this making sense? It's really...
I would want to plus that slightly, is that I think 7s don't care about you actually doing the thing. They care about you feeling and thinking a certain way.
Yeah.
And so the reason that 7s thrive so much in spiritual settings, in my view, ends up having to do with that combination of optimism, emotions, and spinning it with their head in such a way that you're like, think about these things that allow you to rise. So we're not doing anything now, really. What we're doing is engaging that thought and engaging those feelings and being filled with them and elevating. That's why they're great at funerals. That's why they're great on stage at a pulpit.
And why they can be great pastors.
That's how I'd frame that. But
Levity, but not meaninglessness.
yeah.
Right. Thank you. That's what yes. Because they can be very depthy and it's very compelling, actually. Okay, before we go to sixes, did we finish on sevens? I got all like, I feel like I'm always like justice for sevens
Yes.
on this podcast.
You gotta defend them because I was like, I'm gonna keep my fucking mouth shut or I'm gonna get a divorce.
No, because I really,
you gotta speak up for them.
people don't talk about it a lot, but I feel like they're one of the most represented in Enneagram teachings. I just feel like people do it.
And people are only talking about like the blonde bright side sevens named Christy, and
Right.
no one's talking about the moody utilitarian sevens at all.
Seriously. But sevens, if you're
Let's-
listening, you can be boring. You can be negative.
Just be you.
Get
and
right with
also, we're done stalling. Let's talk about sixes. Kristen, how do you not?
I have a solid list here. Do you
list
guys want
us
to
up.
go?
No.
We don't
Let's
want to
go
be
for it.
seen as irresponsible. We don't want to be seen as not thoughtful in any way. We don't want to be seen as naive or gullible or weak, which I think people really miss about sixes, that sixes do not want to be perceived as weak at all. We don't want to think that we're weak. We don't want to be needy. It goes on. Disloyal. You know, we do not want to be perceived as having missed anything ever. Just hilarious.
Like different from FOMO, but sort of like not
No, not
seen
missed
or
an
clocked.
activity, like missed
Not clocked something.
not clocked something. That's a good way to say it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people are like, "Oh, haven't you thought of?" That is like that's an immediate offense, right?
Criminal
Of
act.
course, I fucking thought of it when you talk.
I thought of that for breakfast.
Thought of that before you knew those words existed.
As an outsider, my impression is that sixes get a lot of feedback from folks more than others on these fronts. And so my assumption is that some of the infire would be you complain too much, you're a downer, or you're insecure. And I
mean, I
assume
don't
that
get
those are
that
places.
feedback, but I
Yeah.
have heard that.
Some people
Oh,
who are not me
yeah.
have definitely been called
That's-
insecure.
I hear from sixes all the time that they get all this feedback about themselves.
No,
and
but
I'm
I
like,
think
I'm
it's
like,
actually
who is in your
subtype
inner
specific
circle?
because I think that's fair. I on both the Instagram poll thingy that I checked and like the notes that I prepared, insecure was like a large theme there, but I think insecure is not like I'm so little and so small and so I don't but synonymous with gullible and naive. I think
Yeah.
insecure is
I'd pair it with lacking confidence.
or lacking confidence is
Yeah, but most sixes aren't like, I'm so confident. So that wouldn't be like a hidden.
but I don't think they want to be perceived as like because I think if you say
it's
to a
tricky.
six, if you
want to
say
be
to a
perceived
six,
as confident, because that's risky.
Too confident is.
Yeah.
You don't want to,
Yeah,
like,
it's
competence is acceptable, right? Competence, yes, is desired. But confident is a very tricky word for sixes.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if you're perceived as like so confident, well, then you're in 3 territory, and that's dangerous. So you want to be perceived as correct, not
Yeah.
personally confident.
On that sort of funny hair, like kind of
Which
splitting
they all
words
are,
with a
yes.
hair, I find that like sixes do not want to, and this is going to be like a little hello pot. This is kettle. I'm black. They don't want to be perceived as doubtful because that's like internal, right?
Yeah.
However, they have no problem being like I'm a skeptical person because there's sort of some merit in that because like
Oh yeah,
external doubt is like a testing language, it's a credibility language, but they don't necessarily want to be perceived as doubtful because I think it maybe reverberates off of perhaps an insecurity of sorts and like
it would be more like you don't want to this would be like this shadow piece. I don't want to contact how doubtful I am.
Yeah,
right?
yes.
My external doubt actually helps me feel sturdy. If it's just like, well, I'm a
Exactly.
doubtful
Yes.
person, ooh, then
Right.
my identity's all
because
gunky.
skepticism can just be sort of outside of self and doubt always involves the self.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Also negative.
and doubtful comes across as negative, but I'm not doubtful. I'm just a realist. No, okay, but those are the same thing.
I've done many a podcast on how we are not realists. People get very upset. I'm like, well, What else you got? This is fun. I list my sweet spot.
people
all day.
I would assume that unwanted identity might be specifically difficult for 1s, 2s, and 6s because they're earners. And part of earning has to do with that external offering and connection in that space. So I would be real curious if, say it's the case that a primary fear for 6s is the fear of lacking support. Whatever would undermine that perception-wise, I think would be worth naming. And I hear that in some of the language there, but just to go to the root, it feels like that would be the root.
Yeah, support, but also, not having the right guidance is sometimes even more.
Talk about that.
Well,
Like guidance from others?
Well, it's interesting because, so I think a real hidden piece of 6, right, is I don't want to make my own decisions. I want to make sure I'm making decisions that are gonna work.
Which means that even if you make the decision, you had a benchmark to get you through.
Yeah. So and then if I'm out here making my own decisions, then I might lose support, which is obviously don't want to do that. Yeah.
I wonder if some of these are sort of related to, like, I don't want to be perceived as this because then I will lose the support and the guidance that I have, or won't be able to get the support. Like the feedback I got from our friends on Instagram was, I don't want to be, it's important that I'm not perceived as emotional. Which I was like, okay, that's an interesting. Panicky.
True though. No, totally true.
Panicky,
Hilarious.
irresponsible, a bad friend, having intentions I didn't have, and challenging others.
Don't want to be perceived as challenging others.
Yes, because
no.
and when I was like, when I thought about that, I was like, because they're not challenging them, they're asking them what they need to understand it in full. They're not.
Their internal
They don't want to be
perception
perceived
is that they're not
Yes.
challenging people,
Yes.
but in fact they're challenging people
right.
all the time.
They don't. It's. I mean, and it's not different than what we were talking about with 8s. This is what you're doing. This is how it's being perceived. Right.
Exactly.
But they don't want to be perceived as challenging because their goal is that everyone walks away with an even keel understanding of what's going on, and you can make your decisions that way. Like that's what.
As long as the shared understanding is mine, then we're golden.
Yep. I thought panicky was.
So I wonder if
there.
also it'd be like challenging, but also just like conflictual in some way. Why can't I think of the word? Like I don't want to be
contrarian?
seen as We don't want to be seen that way. Although sometimes we like that identity.
Right. Jeff, did you have thoughts on?
No, I'm learning.
Gullible is a big one, right? Like I didn't see it coming is a real thing that 6s, we want to make sure we've seen everything coming, which is hard way to live. Because it's not like, I'm looking at all the things that might happen, good and bad.
Is that again undermining your role in the community? If you're seen as gullible, then you won't be trustworthy when pointing out things that might be truly worthy of our consideration. You can be dismissed if you're gullible. You know
I
what I
need a
mean?
second. Hang on.
Not to
It's not
interfere.
that. It's like, go ahead.
It sounds more motive adjacent to be gullible. Like I do, the fear of being gullible. It sounds more motive adjacent than relational to be motive adjacent.
Yeah.
Like directly motive adjacent, like being naive or gullible, because there are methods through which they're trying to be sure and certain and so on and so forth.
So it's more like I should have seen that coming. It's very personal. It's
Okay.
very personal. I should have seen that coming. I should have known better.
Are there under certain circumstances or life areas in which you often feel like that should apply, or is it everywhere? When something happens, you should have seen it coming, or something, or is it?
It's just the parts that matter most, which is going to be different
for
each
every
6.
individual. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Let's talk 5s. We got Jackie on 5s.
What I came with, I think 5s do not want to be perceived as withholding as a tactic against others. rather than something that they feel they need to do for themselves.
Do they withhold as a tactic against others?
No. But
So that
again, we're
wouldn't
talking
be-
about we're talking about things that don't align with our intentions, but align with our automatic behaviors. Which it's not about withholding for look what I got and I'm not giving it to you. It's for a sense of control. But they don't.
So the piece that would need to be integrated on that one is I actually do maybe try to control people.
Control people, control
Okay.
situations, control because it feels adjacent to controlling my personal space, right? So, but within that is I don't want to essentially be perceived as doing this to harm, like withholding to harm another person, to hurt. For them, it's respect for my boundaries and respect for yours. So for like the idea of hurting another person through something they're doing for themselves, I think is something they don't want to be perceived as. Burdening or adding to the load of others, so mental favors, and they don't want to be perceived as having nothing substantial to offer.
Bang.
That's what I have for fives.
I have incompetent,
I do too.
ignorant. Yeah.
There ends up being a lot of motive there in terms of pushing into, shoring up that knowledge side.
I think that fives are another one that we could say that they don't want to be perceived.
Yes.
They want what they put out to be perceived for what it is.
Awesome.
And so like the underlying motives and like all of the other stuff, that is for them. What they have offered you is the only thing they want to be perceived. And so like the idea of being needy, being a burden, being incorrect, like all of that to me is sort of the same thing. It's like the stuff that they're holding is stuff that they don't want perceived.
I really struggle. This is just like, as a human being, you think they don't want to be perceived.
Because they're not a gut. Sorry, please go ahead.
Because they're the observer, because they're the perceiver.
They're not a gut type, but self-sufficiency and autonomy are really important to them. So we have to it's a similar value, but a very different engine and way of getting it and doing it. And to be perceived is a block, right? Because they are differently relational. Our friends on Instagram said, talking out of turn, judgmental, lacking awareness, cold, non-relational, needy, and incompetent. So yeah.
The place my mind went was, again, if the five wants to connect through the gifts they offer, they don't want to be perceived as ignorant, would be one side, but as being exploitable would be something that kind of rang for me, or being unprepared.
Yes.
Because that's what they're offering. They're at some levels for connection. I am a prepared person. You can trust me in these spaces. And when connecting, that is a primary value I come to the table with. And I see other people who might want to take advantage of us. And that's something else I bring to the table. That was what kind of went through my mind. But I don't know if that comes across as like, do they ever feel this way? They probably don't feel this way very often, but because they're not. But anyway.
But so if we look at it in terms of them accepting, what do they need to accept, right? Like, I am a person. I'm
a human
here.
where I succumb to the human conditions. Totally.
Yeah.
I am a person, and to be able to say I need a level of let's say recharging, but certain types of withdrawnness and isolation also hurt my relationships, right? I think the acceptance piece is I think within all of these lies a both and, right?
Totally.
And because there's a middle. I'm all about middles. I'm all about, okay, you need what you need, and yes, both and. So I'm curious, and I think this would be a great place for fives is, if they don't want to be perceived as having nothing substantial to offer, or like to rephrase it a different way, the way someone submitted, talking out of turn, right? What could be the acceptance there for them? Because I'm like, I would love a next step from that one for fives.
I'd have more questions about that, right? When you talk out of turn, what are you afraid will happen?
I think it's connected to, or my assumption, right? I connected that mentally to having nothing substantial to offer. So out of turn being like, I said something and like it didn't fit, it didn't add to the conversation. I was sort of aloof in that moment.
I hear a lot of stress move in that list right there, which would make a lot of sense, that they may be pivoting into seventh space and getting a little frantic and not feeling comfortable. And when they feel uncomfortable, they're out of control, and it expresses itself those ways. Another thing that I totally missed this and should have said it up front, that fives commonly are perceived as just a brain, and fives have depthy emotions, and we don't. And when accused of not feeling, I imagine that's something that fives don't want to feel, as though they don't have an emotional life.
Fives are hypersensitive. Like, people don't realize that being an overtly, overt emotionality and being very sensitive are very different very different things. And they need to get their heads around that, because if you think all fives are just brains and NASA, you're so wrong.
Last word on fives. I'd love to put a pin in this and kind of close and pick up with the other 4, 3, 2, 1 next time, if possible. I would love to hit like anything worth naming here, big picture wise, in terms of what do you do with this. We kind of started out there, but anything worth landing on?
I gotta say, Kristen coming in immediately going, what do we need to accept here? Back that ass up. I think that, to be honest, when the other side of the coin isn't just, this is like Enneagram work. Nothing changes, nothing happens if you just name it and know it, right? So if you say, it is important, I am not perceived as, do something with it, starting with accepting it, right? Do something with it to move it out of this shame category and into something neutral, and then something very, very good, right? So my hat's off to, my bra's off to Kristen, because to bring that up like right at the top, to put how we're perceived and how we move through the world adjacent to acceptance. Very good. Very good.
To unshame anything is to bring it into the light and hang out with it and make peace with it. To some degree, all types are just, the type structure is a partial bit of humaning. It's why when we look at the whole circle, we're like, oh, look, a whole person. Not that we will all ever be equal, in every type. Like, that's not the goal. But for me to be able to own, I can be totally irresponsible. I can miss things. I can be negative. I can be, and that's okay. That's the goal. That's how I live in the world.
How do you break up with patterns that you refuse to admit are there, or that you refuse to see? Right. Yeah. Well said. Really well said.
And it's just very different work. Like when I'm working with sixes, there's so much work in when we can finally get to a place where it's like, oh, maybe I am that thing I don't want to be, and that's okay. It's like a world of possibility and opportunity opens up. But it's almost like that 0 to 1 is the hardest bit of work. If I'm committed to being who I think I need to be, okay, then I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that remembering the difference between what we think people perceive of us and the way people actually perceive us, there is a space there. And some of us need to spend more time with the way that we think people perceive us. And some people need to spend more time with how people actually perceive us.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Yes.
Because both of those things are important and part of this, and neither of them are always true. We have to do business with that.
Well said.
Yeah, if
It's a
I'm
great
someone
place.
who doesn't care what other people think, well, then guess what your work is? And if
Yeah.
I'm someone who's always living in other people's heads about me, guess what my work is?
Yep.
Totally.
Yep.
Hell yeah. I love being friends with smart people.
Well, hey, guess what?
Good morning. Good morning. Sorry. What?
That's it. I mean, that was the invitation.
I was right. I'm amazing. Good morning.
We're back. Love you all, especially you, Jackie Contessa. Friends. We'll see you next week.